Hi guys, welcome back. So when I was a Modi-hating left-leaning liberal, this case has definitely hit the mark, because this case was the epitome of the BJP's hate against the minorities, especially Muslims, and the extent that they would go to enact that hate. We were all very convinced that Sanji Ram and the other people had committed these crimes, and now they have been convicted by the lower court, by one of the lower courts, of the crime. So there were 8 accused, of which one was a juvenile, and only one of them, that is Sanji Ram's son, is the only one who has been acquitted of the crimes. So the accused were Sanji Ram, who was the caretaker of Devistan, the juvenile, who was also Sanji Ram's nephew, Vishal Jangotra, who was Sanji Ram's son, Deepak Khajuria, who was the SPO Surendra Kumar, and Parvesh Kumar. And the other 2 were convicted of the crimes of erasing evidences and manipulating the case, so that Sanji Ram would not be convicted. Before we go on, we really need to talk about the community that Aasifa Bano belonged to, that is the Gujar Bakarwala community. There is a lot of significance for this community in this case. So, Gujar Bakarwala community is a nomadic pastoralist community, which really means that they are shepherds who herd goats and sheep. They are located in the Pir Panjal and the Himalayas. There have been a lot of trouble between the Bakarwala community and the mainstream communities in these regions. The main reason is the settlement of Bakarwala community. Because of the developmental changes and other reasons, Bakarwala community has increasingly began to settle down all across Jammu and Kashmir, and also in this region, in Kathua. And another reason for their settling down is the constant conflicts and wars that happen in the region. Now, the mainstream community, the Brahmins and the other communities who have already settled down in these regions, have a lot of hostility towards the nomadic tribes. The main accusations against Bakarwala community is that they indulge in cow slaughter, drug trafficking, and they are also called cow smugglers or encroachers. So Sanji Ram and his accomplices were very prominent in opposing the drive of the governments to settle the Bakarwala community in these areas. And in fact, the charge sheet actually says that the Aasifa Bano case is primarily a conspiracy case to drive out the Muslim tribe from these places. Now, there is an assumption that the Bakarwalas are actually related to the Rohingya Muslims, but there is no such relationship. There are Rohingya Muslims in these regions, and there are those conflicts, but Bakarwala community is not related to that. We know that the BJP supported the conspirators or the criminals in this case. There were 2 BJP ministers who came out in the public to support them. One of them said this: "I don't understand this investigation. Why have they arrested a 14-year-old, a 22-year-old, a 28-year-old and a 37-year-old? How is this possible?" He even called the police Jungle Raj because of the way that they were conducting the investigation. But of course, that has cost the BJP hugely, and the 2 ministers have resigned and they have withdrawn the support given to Sanji Ram and the others. Now that we have looked at all of these peripheral things, let's get into the case. This is where it gets really interesting. So what is the case against them? Aasifa Bano was reported missing and her body was recovered from the temple Devistan, of which Sanji Ram is the custodian. So what are the crimes that they committed? The juvenile and Parvez Kumar abducted the child on a false pretext, and then they renders her unconscious. They were supposed to bring her to the Devistan, but along the way the juvenile sexually assaults her for the first time. Vishal Jangotra, who is the son of Sanji Ram, is informed about the captivity of this child, upon which he comes from Meerut to carry out the crime. So from January 11th to January 14th, she was kept somewhere in the premise of the Devistan, the temple, and she was drugged continuously with a drug called clonazepam, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, and then she was continuously raped. The sexual assault was carried out by the juvenile Vishal and Deepak Gajuria. Parvez Kumar attempts to rape, but he fails to do so. Then by January 14th, they kill the child and they dispose the body right before the Devistan. Now the most curious part in all of this is that Sanji Ram is not accused of any of these crimes. Rather, he is accused of conspiracy case. The case against him is not that he was directly involved in any of these crimes, but that he conspired this indirectly to drive out the Bakarwala community from the area. The question is, how many of us knows that this is the case against him? How many of us know Sanji Ram as the co-conspirator or the main conspirator of Kathua case? Rather, we all know him as the murderer, the rapist and the kidnapper of an 8-year-old. So how is that crucial information kept from us? Now we come to the crux of the problem. How much evidence support the accusations that the culprits did these crimes? The evidences that actually pins the culprits down to those crimes. So the main evidences that has been submitted before court are forensic evidences, eyewitnesses and confession statements, both from witnesses and the culprit. There is also the hair samples of the victim and the materials used for all of these crimes. So let's understand each of these evidences carefully and how they link to the culprits. So first, the conspiracy. We all know that it is incredibly difficult to prove conspiracy against anyone, because we need to have hard evidence showing the planning and some kind of execution of that planning for it to be a conspiracy case. So in this case, is there any such hard evidence? The answer is no. There is no hard evidence linking Sanji Ram, the key conspirator, to the crimes. There is no hard evidence proving that he actually conspired and planned this crime for the end goal. What they have are the confession, some witness statements and all the FIRs and counter FIRs showing the conflict between the two communities. Now the second crime is kidnapping. So what evidence do they have? The accusations here was against the juvenile and Parvez Kumar. How much evidence do they have for kidnapping? There is actually not a lot. There is just one eyewitness statement who claims that she is the last person to have seen the victim before she went missing. It is unclear from the charge sheet if she saw the victim with the juvenile. So there is an eyewitness seeing Aasifa Bano for the last time, but she has not been able to corroborate that she has been seen with the juvenile or Parvesh Kumar. That is all the evidence that they have, that these people kidnapped that little child. Next is sexual assault. Then this is where the case gets even trickier. The postmortem report clearly shows that she has been drugged and raped. She also had some food in her stomach, which shows that she was not completely starving. There is enough evidence, there is overwhelming evidence, not just enough, overwhelming evidence that this little child was raped. But there is no evidence that we know of that link the culprits to that sexual assault or the crime. The accusations were leveled against the juvenile Vishal Jangotra. Parvesh had attempts to rape charges, but he did not commit the crime. Now comes the very curious case of Vishal Jangotra. Sanji Ram's son is the only one who has been acquitted in this case. So why was he acquitted? Because he was able to show a credible alibi for where he was in these days. He was able to produce the signature on the attendance sheet in his college corresponding to these days. So how is Vishal simultaneously in Jammu, in Kathua in Jammu and in Meerut, UP? Again, we have the confession statements of Vishal where he actually confesses being there and doing these crimes, but he also has a credible alibi. Now it comes to murder. So the postmortem report shows that she died as a result of strangulation and blunt force to the head. These were allegedly committed by the juvenile and Jangotra, if I'm right, while Vishal and Parvesh Kumar stood watch. There is the chunni used for strangulation, which was recovered, and there is also the stone used for hitting the child. So is there any other evidence? No, there isn't. They did not produce, as far as we know, any evidence linking these culprits to these crimes. And again, the question of how Vishal was involved in this murder comes up, because even though he confessed that he was there at the time of the murder, he also had an alibi where he was in Meerut. So how could Vishal be at two places at the same time? And as we know, all these culprits have confessed to the crimes they have been accused of, and it was mainly based on their confessions that they have been convicted. Because as you know, and as far as we know, no hard proof linking the crime and the culprits have been produced. So what does this all mean? There was a crime committed against an 8-year-old girl child where she was abducted, she was drugged, raped and then killed after a number of days. And then she was left at Devi's Than. All of this happened. But who did these crimes? For that, we need DNA evidences or forensic evidences linking those culprits to that crime, which the police have not mentioned in the charge sheet. I mean, can you imagine an inquiry where they actually have the samples of everything that they could look for, including the weapons used. They have all the forensic studies done on those samples. They don't have a DNA match connecting the criminals and the victim. How would anyone conclude such a study without actually linking the criminal to the crime? I mean, if they really had those DNA matches, they actually would have submitted it before the court and they could have locked them away for good. Why did they do that? And then you get to see this news. Both the accused and the witnesses are stating that they have been tortured into making these confessions. The witnesses actually had to file the complaint in a court because the police wouldn't take up their case. Therefore, the court had to direct the SSP to file these cases because the court can see a cognizable offense. What do you think about that? I don't know if you have seen the Netflix series which is completely about confessions. False confessions using torture or manipulation is a very commonplace thing all around the world, and it is a huge problem in our judicial system. If I'm correct, in India we actually have a rule where confessions alone cannot convict a person. You need hard evidence along with the confession to convict them. But then in this case, I don't understand how much hard evidence there is regarding the culpability of these individuals. Of course, there is an overwhelming amount of evidence proving that the crime happened. But did these people do that crime? That is the question. Now, if this is the amount of evidence that the police was able to collect, if this is it really, it is possible for the convicted to come out of these charges in a higher court. But how does that benefit anybody? If these people actually are innocent, they would have rotten away in jail. They would have been tortured. Their whole lives have been uprooted and their futures destroyed over a false accuse, over a false confession. How can you mitigate that cost? The BJP lost its power in Jammu and Kashmir because of this case. People's perception on BJP almost turned 180 because of this case. How are you going to mitigate all of that cost if in the future these people are acquitted for the lack of evidence? And of course, justice for the victim. If these people did not do that crime, somebody else did because the crime happened. So all in all, because of the huge media frenzy and the protests and all of these Bollywood people demanding the arrest of these BJP supporters, the real culprits may have escaped. We know how much media frenzy and how much attention this case got, where almost all of the Bollywood stars posting their pictures with placards demanding justice for Aasifa, which is a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but how do you know that these are the people who committed these atrocities? Once again, I'm not overruling the possibility that some of the evidences or the information about some of the evidence were not released to the public, which could completely turn this thing around. But as far as we know, as far as the information that we have, there is no link between the crime and the criminals or the conspiracy charges. So that's it for this video. It's not a very positive video, but if you liked it, please hit the like button. And more importantly, tell me in the comment section what you think about this whole deal. Do you really think that the culpability of these convicts have been proven beyond any doubt? You can also find a lot of videos like this in my channel. Please subscribe to watch more such videos. Thank you for watching and have a great time. Share this video with others and follow me on my Instagram and Facebook pages. The links are given in the description.